This is the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast. My name is Andrew Jones and with me as always is...
Sarah Bolt.
How are you doing, Sarah?
I'm very well, thank you, Andrew. How are things with you?
Yeah, sun's shining today, so can't complain. We've got a really interesting podcast today. It wasn't originally planned. It was probably planned to go out in about a month's time, but due to other circumstances, we've been asked to delay another one, which we'll talk about in a minute. So today we're going to talk about grazing with robots.
It's really, really interesting, this one. I think that so many people think robots mean indoor housed cows, and this certainly puts pay to that idea.
Exactly. You might think, why are we talking about grazing in January? But I can certainly assure you that one of our guests will graze in January if the conditions are right. And really, I know it only seems like the cows only came in probably 5 minutes ago, especially given the autumn we had. It's never too early to start about grazing. If you're talking serious about grazing, you probably want to be starting in a month's time anyway, don't you?
Definitely, at least planning.
Well, yeah, weather permitting, obviously. But yes, just sort of saying, I suppose it's a bit of a tease. We were going to put something else out, which we're not allowed to talk about yet. It will be a bit of an exclusive on the podcast. But we've been asked to put it back a month simply because it's going to be another farming press as well, and they just want us to hold it back until it's available elsewhere to see about it, and all the stakeholders involved are all lined up. So in a month's time, you hopefully understand why. It's I think something could be quite exciting, isn't it?
It's a really exciting project that our guests are going to share with us. So I guess it's always the case when things are being published and everything else that we've all got to, as you said, have your ducks all in a row, and guess it's just a juggling act for all of us.
Well, it is. Let's be blunt. It's a little bit frustrating from our end because it's here, it's ready to go, and it was going to go, but we've been asked to put it back. So here we are. Otherwise, because it doesn't matter. We can juggle things around. Otherwise, let's go talk about grazing with robots. This podcast has been brought to you today by Chewing the Cud Limited, who offer completely independent dairy and beef nutrition, cow signals advice and training, along with ROMS mobility scoring. For more details on these and other services available, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us directly on nutrition@chewingthecud.com. Chewing the Cud Limited now offers first aid training from a registered first aid at work trainer and experienced minor injuries practitioner. For more details, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us directly on training@chewingthecud.com. Hello, I'm Andrew Jones.
And I'm Sarah Bolt.
And welcome to the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry.
Farmer, advisor, processor, and everyone else. We have topics and episodes that will interest you.
We discuss the practical and the technical aspects of different UK dairy industry topics.
We aim to make you think about what you're doing and ask yourself, can it be done differently?
Listen to us speak with specialists from inside and outside the industry about their area of expertise.
Subscribe and listen to episodes for free on your favourite podcast platform.
Sign up to our website, www.chewingthecud.com, for podcast notifications so you never miss an episode.
And links to our socials, including Instagram, Chewing the Cud Podcast, all one word, and remember, no G.
Or email us direct on podcast@chewingthecud.com.
If you like what we do, please share and leave us a review to show your support. And that's it. Enjoy today's episode.
Hello and welcome back to Chewing the Cud podcast. Today we are talking about robots and grazing, and our guests are, first of all, Matthew Senior. Hello, Matthew.
Hello.
And George Dalton. Hello, George.
Hello.
Welcome to you both. Like usual, Matt, do you want to start with yourself and how you got to where you are today?
So I'm running. We have a 330 cow organic dairy herd at home, run on 4 Lely robots with split block calving, 60/40 autumn spring now, and fully grazing from February to mid-November, end of November most years, if we can.
Yep.
I also do a little bit with Lely Yeovil and support the FMS, so the farm management support side, for grazing farms and setting up when people get started. So.
Yep. And George?
Yep, so we've got a 550-acre family dairy farm where we've got 250 autumn calving cows. There's a bit more of a story as to how we got to that stage. But I've been using 4 Lely A5 robots for 2 years now. And yes, milk 250, grazing, and self-feed silage as well.
And that's, as you say, is a bit of a story. That's where I thought I'd start this. George, when I first met you, you were a spring carver. And then I know you've obviously switched to autumn, and now you've switched to autumn with robots. I know Matt's been grazing far longer, but I thought with yourself, what's your story? Why that change of policy, I guess, spring to autumn, but more particularly autumn to robots?
Yeah, so when I came back to the farm in 2008, we were all year round calving, actually, which was fine. But we found we were doing an awful lot of work to not make a massive amount of money. And at the time, the farm needed quite a bit of money spent on it in terms of the MVZs had just come in, slurry storage. We didn't have that much cubicle housing. And so after a few years of being back, my take on that was to avoid a lot of the expenditure that I now have gone on to do. But we went spring calving, and I've done 10 years as a spring carver, which was really good. We had some very good years like that. So that is out wintering cattle on kale and turnips in the wintertime.
Well, where your farm is, because 20 minutes outside from where I live,
it is, yeah.
It's ideal for some out wintering, isn't it?
Exactly. The farm's got some chalk downland on the top. The dairy's then on some clay soil over chalk. The farm's split by the A30 road going through the middle of it, and then some lighter green sandy soil on the northern side. So we would, outwinter calves, heifers and cows outside on kale, turnips, baled silage, some straw, and then milk on the grazing platform for the rest of the year. And that was fine. The key bit that I probably had not researched quite well enough is that the cow numbers grew a bit, and I was essentially overstocked on my grazing platform. So you referred to where we are. We're kind of slightly on the edge of dairy arable country here. So whilst around the dairy does have some good grass growing ground, we were just suffering from dry summers, wet winters, and so that was the first lever, is that I found I was feeding lots of cows silage to fairly fresh spring calvers, and you ended up with some of the costs of an autumn carver, despite being with only the output of a spring carver. The other driver for change probably was milk contract. So my milk comes only 10 minutes up the road to BV Dairy in Shaftesbury, which is now part of the First Milk Group. And their contract just shifted a bit to, penalise the spring milk a bit more, incentivise the autumn. So we had some formulas where we were having to supply X amount of milk up to the end of December. So again, I was faced with feeding stale spring calvers right up to Christmas and New Year time. So all of that was fine, but I was slightly on a treadmill of that I could never quite achieve the best results or KPIs as a spring carver. And so, we're lucky enough to own the farm as well. And I felt that it was worthy of us investing to try and modernise it for the future. The options at that time generally were to give up and get out of dairying completely immediately, which we didn't want to do. Continue for X number of years with an older setup, but sort of knowing that was perhaps still round the corner, or stick with it and spend some money. So I started a plan to essentially just look at how I could fit cubicles into existing sheds. And that process organically grew into, right, how are we then dealing with the slurry? So that was more concrete and slurry channels, and I was quite keen on separating the slurry at that point, so that put me down that route. And then I was keen to make sure I knew where we could build another parlour if I ever wanted to.
You've got to build this into your plan, haven't you?
Exactly. So I did have some help with that from Ivor Davey of Cowplan. He helped do some drawings, and actually it was him who first said to me, I think on my very first meeting, have I ever considered robots? And I said absolutely not, dismissed it immediately because it was so far away from what I was doing at the time.
Well, because robots are traditionally seen as House 365, high input, high output, and your system just was not that.
Exactly. And so I did dismiss it, and it was quite a long process. I'm quite a slow burner with the thinking and planning of what we were going to do. I was very aware that it was a once in a lifetime type investment. And so after talking to him for, I don't know, a year and a half or something, prior to COVID and the energy crisis, all we ever talked about was labour and staff issues on farms, and it just got my mind thinking to, the long term there, and that it felt like it was worthy of me researching the robot route. And so essentially that's what I did. At the time, I went with a discussion group to Matthew's farm.
Yep.
And visited that, and I actually remember it being a lovely spring day, and it was a absolutely fantastic sort of PR selling point for dairy farming because there was cows everywhere, very free range, and you obviously did a very good job on the day because I came away thinking, just something in my brain thought, I reckon I can do this at home. I think I did another general grazing open day with Laylee, and then following that, I also did, with Matthew, a trip to Ireland to look around farms there. And so that process is probably what then cemented the idea of, yes, I can make this work.
So the first step really changing from spring to autumn was more to do with environmental conditions or to make better use of what you had on the farm.
Yes, and also financial. I wouldn't be doing it unless we thought we could make more money as an autumn than a spring carver. I felt I had the cow type to do it. We were always a slightly bigger cow than the real spring calving guys. And so, yes, it felt like it was a far better fit for the physical attributes of the farm.
So I'm really keen to just sort of delve into some of what you're talking about, sort of setting your strategy. I think that's something that perhaps dairy farmers don't always find the time to do. And how did you firstly make the time to do that, and then actually go about thinking about how you're going to set your strategy to actually try and make it work? And I'm going to add another one on the end there quickly as to sort of some of those KPIs that you were monitoring in order to sort of perhaps help make those strategic decisions.
I think finding the time is just a being driven one, as in if you I knew I had to do something.
Yeah.
And so you just make time for that sort of thing. That's why it probably took so long, is because I like to think about it for a long time. So yeah, life's busy enough on a dairy farm anyway.
Definitely.
So just sort of fitting that in and around the day-to-day workload was what we did. KPI wise, I mean, I sort of touched on it, but it was grass growth really. We'd be an average 10 to 11 ton of dry matter grass growing type farm.
So
My
very
best
good.
is sort of 14, but we also have had years as low as 7 or 8, and those years were hurting a bit. So those were the sort of drivers for change, I suppose.
Interestingly, you're not the only farm I know that's gone spring to autumn for that reason. There were farms that dry up when it does go dry, and we have had drier years the last few years, and so they've switched, like yourself, from spring to autumn for that very reason, because otherwise they were spending too much time late spring, summer feeding, when the whole point of that system is not to be feeding. So it's just interesting. Then obviously you've then made the next step and gone, hey, we're going to go robots as well.
I'm guessing, Matt, does some of that sort of grass growth come into some of your decisions from going to split block?
All of it. So every farm I find, and I would say majority of us have been there, every farm has a sweet spot. You've got to go through the pain. You've got to go over that sweet spot before you realise where it actually is.
I've heard that so many times, and I love that analogy.
For us at home, we overdid it when we were milking 400 spring calvers. So we were spring calving originally, milked through standard herringbone parlour, 5-6 members of staff. And again, we overstepped that sweet spot, a bit like George.
You base it on a good year, don't you? You go, oh, we can do it, we've got a good year. So you push it. And then when you have that bad year, it suddenly kicks you.
Yeah.
But I think it's the sign of a good dairy farm, because if you haven't gone over it, you don't know where the boundary is.
No, exactly. And it's the same with the feed space. In when you're feeding on the yard, you pull out 10, 15 cows, but your milk stays the same.
Yeah.
Because you've automatically given the existing ones more space to roam and do what they want to do. So that was our sort of, and then over time, staff, exactly the same. And then alongside some of the things, we also have another sideline that we do, although we were 100% spring calving. We were processing a percentage of our own milk. We needed milk all year round. And that sort of led us on to having sort of 15-20% in milk through the winter period when majority were dry. Again, combined with staff, I'm very much a sort of you need an easy, simple layout where everything just flows. And again, 14 years ago, I think it was, we had Ivor Davey out, and he did an aerial plan of the farm, of the buildings, and we did a time in motion process and just the little things. So all your roofs facing the same way, the ridges, if you can future-proof it for solar panels, etc., so that they're lying in the correct way, scraping, all in straight lines, cows with no dead ends in the passages. Once you start that sort of system, it does evolve, and you do get there.
And it makes it easier to grow, doesn't it? Sort of ventilation, all of those sorts of things just work so much better once you've...
But there's time management as well.
But so taking a step back, Matt, for you, when did the robot journey start for you? Because obviously you say you were spring calving in a conventional parlour at that time.
Yeah. So we're year 7 on robots at home. But it probably started 9 years ago for me on a discussion group visit to Ireland. I'd been, so in the UK, majority of robot systems are fully housed. I admit my background was high input sort of system, but over the years we've sort of gone the route we have, which I thoroughly enjoy. And it was just, I always wanted to graze, and I had never seen the grazing system until we went to Ireland. And it just evolved from there, really. And then we visited, over a period of 2 years, I visited 14 different farms. And then we could sit down. And at a time then when we decided to go to robots, we had a job advert out. We were looking for a herdsperson to assist us. And same problem. The adverts now, it's like a holiday brochure. Who's got the best house? Who's got the best facilities? And we didn't really fall into any of those. And twice in a row it happened. We'd offered somebody the opportunity. 10 days before they're supposed to start, they decided that something else had happened. And that happened twice in a row. Always the same at home. My wife and I, we just roll our sleeves up and we'll just carry on. So yeah, we were going into longer days, etc. And it just, well, we had to do something. And again, it was like everybody wants a house with a job. We don't have accommodation on the farm to supply, so we were renting accommodation. So when you put that package together, you're looking at quite a reasonable financial package. And then when we just had Lely from Ireland come out, and they said, well, yes, it would work in our system. And then we've just evolved from there, really.
As you say, these days it's not just. It used to be if you got a house, you could get somebody, but it's not now, is it? It's facilities and everything that go with it.
Yeah,
definitely. So,
but also things have changed. So we can't keep doing what the other generation did just because father did it or grandfather did it. The agricultural industry is a lovely industry to work in, and it's so diverse. But being stuck in a milking parlour for 3-4 hours each end of the day is not really going to attract people into an industry.
Not now.
So this is where, for us especially, the robots, it's just so flexible.
But that's something with the whole industry, though, isn't it? As you say, we can't do it yet. I know clients that have got parlours that are older than me, and they're still milking in them. And there's this whole broad range within agriculture where you are in terms of you have the latest, greatest, whether it's robots or whatever it happens to be, or you're still milking, usually in a family, in a parlour that's older than me. And it's like, well, it does the job. We just keep going with it. And that's just an example, but there's so many different things there in between in terms of uptake of different levels of technology and everything else.
I think that's the key, though, isn't it? Is that lots of people do things differently, but it's whatever works for that family, that farm.
Yeah.
Um,
and neither of them are right or wrong.
And I think what's interesting for both of you that you actually looked at what your supply needed. So with you, Matt, it was actually your direct supply, and with you, George, it was actually looking at what the dairy required of you as well. So it's actually not just perhaps what motivated you, but it's actually what was right for your client base as well. I think that's really, really important.
But going back, so Matt, you said, was it 7 years you've had them at home now?
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's been some painful lessons along the way.
In the early days, we started literally at COVID. So that was a bit painful because we weren't allowed to have the physical support.
The people on farm to help. Yep.
We had Zoom calls, but you can't go. It's hard showing somebody grazing on a Zoom call.
Oh, they can't exactly help you push the cows and the robots either, can they, on a Zoom call?
And it was just a little bit because over here we're so used to house systems, and people have the mentality of you have a robot. Yes, you will increase your yield per cow. You also increase the number of visits that cow. So they have they like to see an average of 3 milkings a day. The way that the robot system works, or the computer side of the system, that to me, it's like you've got a piece of cake and it's all done on your average number of visits as a proportion of cake that is allocated to each visit. Those little settings we struggled with in the early days because we have a crossbred type cow. Average live weight is now is 450 kilos, just over. When we started, it was actually closer to 430 kilos, so a smallish cow. We weren't doing those 3 visits a day. You know, we're quite happy on an average of 2 visits a day, because my thinking was I wanted to match what I was doing through the parlour before. Anything above that, as in increasing yield, was hopefully a bonus. But more importantly, that bonus had to come with no extra feed or concentrate. It was coming from extra forage eaten or grown. So yeah.
So what are your concentrate levels?
So concentrate levels. So we always originally go back to in 2019, we were milking 400 cows. Very simple, twice a day, averaging just under 5,000. So it was about 4,800 litres a cow on 900 kilos of concentrate across an annual basis, on a solids basis of 4.9 fat and 3.7, 3.8 protein on an average. So we wanted to match what we were doing to that. Now we are 330 cows on average, or just under 330 cows total. This particular year, because of the drought, we have just pushed up to that 1.2 tonne of concentrate, but that's mainly on drought. But we're producing just short of 1.9 million litres. So we're just under that 6,000 litres. So we've put 1,000 litres per cow on with not much more concentrate.
So 0.3.
Less than 0.3, yeah. So my average is 0.25 for this year. We're normally under the 0.2.
Fantastic.
Definitely. So going back to yourself, George, you obviously went to Ireland. I think I might have bumped into you somewhere along the lines because our kids were at school together, weren't they? And you sort of said, I've been to Ireland and they can do it over there and they've got lots. And you were quite enthusiastic about the idea, but I think obviously you sat down and must have done some more with Matt. But once you made the decision, where did it go from there? Was it obviously getting Matt involved more, or because you had a fairly extensive grazing system already set up? Has there been many changes to that?
Yeah, so I think, just to touch on the decision to change is interesting because we then once I was sold with the sort of practicalities or outside idea of it, you obviously go home and do a few numbers and do a bit of a business plan. And quite a classic example is we sat down in a meeting with our accountant and he said, right, well, if you want to do that, we better sell all the cows and we better have some big high-yielding Holsteins. And that's
the stereotype, basically,
because that's all he'd seen. Maybe not, a person at the forefront or the front of the coalface of farming, but that was the perception. And that reaction, made me laugh, but probably made me more determined to say, actually, hang on, I don't think that is the case. And actually, it's been great meeting Matt and Coral because they've been really helpful, but were probably the most prominent people that I knew that were grazing with robots here. And even now, there's a few other farms, but it isn't commonplace at all. Whereas that trip to Ireland and seeing what the industry does there, they genuinely couldn't sell the robots quick enough. Obviously, smaller farms, but a lot of it was 1 or 2 robot setups with 100, 120 cows. And so where I was getting quite a lot of kickback in this country of that actually this can't be done, to go there and just see it be very commonplace kind of gave me the confidence to say, actually, this can be done here. So that was that side of it. So the grazing side of it I already knew because we'd been spring calving for 10 years. My cows were already grazing a lot. Just to put some of the figures in perspective, so my cows would be bigger than Matt's. We're a kind of 570 kilo live weight cow. As a spring calver, we were doing about 5,500 litres. But because of the overstocking meant we were often feeding 1.1, 1.2 tonnes of concentrate. And so fast forward then, we did one season in the parlour as an autumn calver, and the yields rose to about 7,000 litres. fast forward to now is that we're 8,100 and I'm feeding just under 2 tonnes of concentrate. And that's mostly obviously the cake going through the robots. We include a little bit of rape meal that we mix in with maize that's outside, but there's no diet feeder or TMR mix going in. And that includes all the dry cow rolls and other stuff. So so then milk qualities at the moment, rolling average would be sort of 4.65 and 3.65 protein, something like that. So they're obviously back a bit, but that's because we've got more yield. I would put probably over 1,000 litres of the yield increase down to the robots. And the comparison there is that for those litres, it felt like we weren't feeding any more cake. We were just being able to target it. The computer has a feed table system that either the Laylee Yeovil will help you set up at the start, but actually after that, it is just your decisions with nutritionist, Matthew, whoever, help just basing your decisions on how much you want to feed for what milk you get. But it just means you can target that food. So, link back to the visits mindset that some cows can milk 5 times a day, but the minimum's 1. There'll be some cows that, obviously depends on stage of lactation, but some cows will milk 3 or 4 times a day, and some will be on 1.5. But neither's right or wrong, and obviously the lower yielding ones give more solids, so they can be equally as profitable. In terms of the grazing, we already had a track infrastructure set up. I guess we'll go on to talk about it, but obviously the principle of the grazing is the ABC grazing, so that's 3 times a day grazing of different areas of the farm. So actually that's probably where Matthew was very helpful in that. That's the bit that I couldn't get my head around. Although I knew grazing, I just needed to know how that flow was going to work around the farm. So actually, despite being milking with the robots for just over 2 years, we have 2 cow tracks, an east and westerly one, and we just alternate between the 2, but split the 3 grazings between the 2. That's worked so far. We have small sections of routes that get me to the 3rd grazing without having to adapt what you do. But the principle really is that the other side of the grazeway gate, which is the gate that all the cows have to exit out through of, there's 4 routes. One's going to return them to the yard. The other 3 are the A, B and the C. And after that, essentially, it's just down to your track and infrastructure network, and everything's done with a bungee or electric fence.
So you've not really made any massive changes in terms of your infrastructure? Not
huge, no. I probably have felt like smaller paddocks would be more useful. You're fairly familiar with my setup, but where we were, well, it wasn't arable, but they were there. It's one big flat grazing block, so I managed to split mine up when we were spring calving into 2 hectare or 5 acre paddocks.
It would have been the right size for the herd size, where of course you're not grazing herd wise now,
exactly.
Are you?
So, I mean, I don't know what Matt thinks. My only comment is where you have 3 fences set up, it's taking a little bit longer to get in and out of a paddock, and that's where back fencing and things like that has its role to play. I don't do much of that. I probably should do more, but yeah.
So, Matt, for those that aren't familiar with the ABC grazing, can you perhaps talk us through why it's important and sort of that how it works really with the robots?
Yeah, so everybody's misconception with robots is that the cow the cow comes to the robot to be milked. That's one main process. But everybody thinks that the cow comes back and has to be fed concentrate. That's not the fact. With the grazing, it is split ABC, and we work on, so every 8 hours, the gate will change automatically to whichever time of day or direction you want. And we work on a principle of the dry matter intake that your cow is allocated or eating. And we split. So for me, and I think for George, we call it breakfast, dinner and tea. So from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m., the gate opens and the cows will be allocated their A grazing. which would be 40% of their dry matter intake. And then from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., they'd go off in a different direction to B, which would be another 40% of their allocation. And then C, from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., is their 20% of the allocation. And the research has shown that a cow eats that little bit less at night, but also the encouragement is she's only been allocated 20%. So she'll get up for 2 a.m., come back to the robot, and she knows that when she comes back to the robot after 2 a.m., she's going to go to a fresh piece of allocation of grass.
So the driver for her is knowing she's going to get that fresh grass.
She's going to get that fresh grass every time.
It's not the sweeties in the parlour.
No, it's not. So, and again, with the feed to yield, you can be as generous or as tight on the cow as you wish. Do not get your cake rep to set your feed to yield. So for us, I have an allocation. So anything giving less than 15 kilos of milk doesn't get any cake. The driver is food outside.
Yeah, I was going to ask that because I know my experience with a client that was robots and got out of robots. I was trying to cut the cake back, and if I went below 2.5 kilos, they'd complain that the fetch list got. Now they weren't grazing, but the fetch list got higher, and they were having to fetch more cows. But you're finding you can feed the lower ones zero cake.
Zero cake. If you want to, you can have a liquid feed source, so molasses, and that can be watered down. So it's just tricks that keeps them happy, so they're licking something when they're there. But the question I would ask in that scenario, if they're what stage of lactation is that cow in?
Late lactation.
Late lactation. So why do you expect a late lactation cow that's maybe only giving 20 litres of milk or less to come in for 3 visits a day?
It's not going to happen, is it? Because
not going to happen.
They're not eating. They're big and full and should be in calf, heavy in calf. They've not got a lot of milk. There's not got the driver for them. It's now their time to sort of start to ease back a little bit, isn't it?
So this is where in my sort of system, it is the best way to free range dairying. It is up. You've got to trust the cow naturally, but it's up to the cow to do as much or as little as she wants. But like George said, the later lactation cows have a higher solids. We're all paid on solids, so that's a benefit to us. But it's just I'm happy with averaging 2 milkings a day.
But you also, I mean, I'll say I have been to a farm because we did a cow signals course 2 years ago now, I think it was. And I can't remember, you weren't grazing that, but you had been grazing, was it January or something? Yeah. I think it was. You're happy that if the conditions are right, you just put them out and graze.
Yeah, they can go out and graze, because at the end of the day, graze grass is the cheapest food in front of them. We soon add costs by making silage, etc. So, that's the cheapest.
So talking of silage, George, I'm really keen to hear a little bit more about your self-feed. Is it something that you were doing before you had the robots, or is that, again, something new you've had to master?
Oh, it's another thing that I've had to learn, actually. So, again, when part of that big sort of building plan and future-proofing design, I knew I wanted to try and feed the cows cheaply, but I knew I'd already decided that the autumn profile was going to be the best fit for the farm. We do have an old Ford tractor and an old Keenan feeder that we were using, but the reality was that if I was going to have a feed fence and be mixing up a TMR, that they would need replacing. That ties you to a person doing that. It needs the machinery to work and start and all that kind of thing. So I had a friend who was very into self-feed, and we often joked that, we just need the robot to milk the cow and the cow to eat its own silage on the self-feed. That's it. What else can there be to do? In reality, there is still quite a bit to do, but it's probably much like the robots. It's just a slightly tweak to your skill set to learn something a little bit different. So So we put in a 50 metre wide and 35 metre deep tarmac pad that's got some Lego blocks around the side. We layer in first cut silage from the left hand side, some second cut from the right hand side, and then that's the easy bit. The hard bit is in the autumn. We then unsheet the whole lot, which is a absolute pig of a job, and then put maize all over the top of it. Because of the green sandy soil, the maize does grow quite well on the farm, so I was always keen to keep that in there. And then it was probably learning from some other discussion group friends about incorporating rape meal into that. So very crude, but we just tip a bucket load on each trailer that comes in. And so far I've had a good go at that. I'm still very much finding my way with the self-feed. We because the cows are all wearing a collar that has the responder on it for the robot. It has a collar weight below their neck, which is to keep it all the right way up. That proved an extra challenge to get them to train to eat over the wire. Any cow will eat under a wire, but getting them to eat over it was a bit harder. So there's all the K-Cars law sort of rules to follow with heights of wire, how far out the wire should be, that kind of thing. And we've got some bits of blue pipe and stick with that kind of thing on for people to follow. But essentially, if you follow that with some tweaks, then we have found the wire just needs to be a little bit closer and a little bit lower just to avoid the collar weight catching. We've got on with them self-feeding. So last year, to put it in perspective, they've had access to a self-feed clamp for 3 autumns. However, last year we were still we were taking some grabs off the top and mixing it and putting it in racks. This year we've done the whole season with them just eating it out of the clamp.
So you've answered my next question there. I was going to ask you, does it follow the K-Cars law sort of ethos? And obviously it does. For those people that are listening that don't perhaps know of K-Cars law, prominent southeast and a sort of a system followed by many autumn block carvers self-feeding in the southeast.
Yes.
And sort of, am I correct in thinking sort of silage pit heights are about 5 foot max?
Yeah, you could go a little bit taller than that, but exactly, it's all about how high up your cow can reach to eat sensibly. We use a prong to knock down the top edges if there's a bit of an overhang or anything like that. So there's a bit more physicality to the job, which actually it's much like the robots. It does 90% of the work for you, but the 10% of the work you're doing, you still have to think about and get right, and make sure there's no waste going in there, that the wire's right. Otherwise, you have hungry cows, or get it wrong too close and there's too much wastage and food on the floor. But
I've got to be honest, I didn't even know there was a law because, and it's interesting you say the practicalities of having that weight, because that's not something I'd even thought of. What I was going to say was, isn't it funny how we all used to self-feed? Because I definitely remember my father in the late 70s, everything was self-feed silage, and then we've all gone away.
We didn't have these big machines.
Well, no, yeah, we've all gone away from it, and then people are going, because I know, as you say, there are other people probably think the same people as you say, that they add rape to their maize to get the protein up, and it works for them, and they do a good job. And it's obviously, you're finding the same. And you say you're not physically, but what you do have to do, you just have to think about those little bits that make the difference. That's what makes the difference, isn't there?
Yeah, and I was also going to just touch on when Matthew's talking about like the fetch list for cows. It's quite a common phrase that is talked about or associated with robots, and especially on the housed herd. So you probably agree, it feels like there's a big focus for staff on the farm to constantly be collecting cows, whereas probably for both of our types of cows, we're less worried about how often they milk. So actually, for me, I have to do quite a bit of that at calving time, training heifers, that sort of thing. It stands to reason. But actually, after that, if you get the balance of cow numbers right for the robots and enough free time on the robots to give them space to visit, they just get on with it. And then during the grazing season, all of that's done for you via the grazeway gate. Because those cows can only get back out via it, They have to be milked if they need to be milked, but also crucially, late lactation, they might not even need milking. So there's times when cows will walk up and try the gate because, as Matt pointed out earlier, they're more interested in the fresh bite of grass. So that's how you get that movement around the farm without a massive amount of work. And all our job really is to stay ahead of the cow's food with electric fences.
So apart from maybe at calving, do either of you do any fetching of cows at all, like just once a day in the morning to make sure the paddocks are clear, or?
Well, it's sort of a standard. So for me, we have, when we're grazing, it's ABC. So to give you an idea, so my day starts not much before 7:30. If I'm out before 7:30 in the morning, it's normally because I've got something else happening during the day. But I would nip out first thing in the morning and go down to what I call the B fences. So if you remember the B access to B grazing, the last cow had access at 6 p.m. So when I go out at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning down to B, hopefully, if my grazing allocations are all correct, there'll be no cows there. So they've done that themselves. If there is, I will just send them on their way, move the fence for their 10 a.m. break, follow those cows back to the robot. I would then walk away from those cows because the only way back out to any grazing is through the robot again before they're allowed out through the grazeway gate. So that job's done. For me as well, normally on my way back, I would see how many cows are left in their C grazing. So bearing in mind, last cow had access there at 2 a.m., ready for when A opened up. Hopefully there'd be not many cows in there. I would normally clear that paddock and move that fence. So I do 2 fences in 40 minutes in the morning. That technically is me done. So Coral then would do the washing around the robots and change the filters. Unless we're serving or something like that, or calving, that is me done for the day. And then in late afternoon, I say any time after 5 o'clock, I would nip down to A. Again, if my allocations have been correct, there'll be no cows down there. I would move that fence, so that fence is ready for 2 a.m. Again, and then wash around the robots in the afternoon, twice a day is what we do. That is it.
Make dairy farming sound like it's an easy life.
It is, but it's so much more flexible with the robots now. And like where we used to be 5 or 6 full-time on the dairy, there's actually now only 2 of us. But it's 2 of us and we can have time away during the day. So it's nothing for me or for Coral and myself we've nipped down to the Cornwall show for the day, done the fences early in the morning. We've left the farm at 7 o'clock. And we're 9 times out of 10, if we're back when it's dark, it's not the end of the world. And it's literally half an hour to do the jobs. But that's the easy side of it. We always find jobs to do. You've got young stock, etc. But it gives you more time to focus on those other little jobs.
George, you mentioned at calving, but any other time, do you similar to Matt, or?
Yeah, pretty similar. Probably worth touching on is it takes a bit of time for the cows to spread out and get that moving as a herd mentality out of them. And so I'm not quite as far along that journey as Matthew is. I often joke as the advice you would have given me my first year when I was ringing saying, oh, what do I do? We've got, lots of cows here or in the wrong place. Every time he'd say, go and have a cup of tea. And I really struggled with it. I was like, how can I do that? They're all bunched up here. They're in the wrong place, whatever. And first year, that was impossible. Second year, and it is a mindset thing. I'm absolutely fine with that. 9 times out of 10, you can they sort themselves out, just given time. So it takes a minute or two for them to spread out. Don't forget they've spent years being sort of called at 5 a.m. in the morning and 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So that takes a bit of time to get used to. And I think the other thing is never, or my experience is never in my wildest dreams did I think when we set the gate going to let them out for grazing, would I struggle to get them to come back in. So I was terrified that as I set that gate going, they'd had all winter in at this point, that I wouldn't see a cow ever again because they like the sunshine and the green grass outside. And if I'm honest, my biggest issue during that first year was the grouping of them all coming back at once. So that's the thing to remember is 4 robots milking 4 cows, you're at 100% capacity immediately, and it's a slow job. So that was slightly strange to get used to at the start.
Well, I was going to say, should we rephrase that maybe the problem in the first year wasn't the cows, it was you?
100%. A lot of it is cliche.
That is normally the issue.
Because we all expect, as you say, we all expect that. Now, as we're talking grazing, I've got to ask, what kind of covers do you normally go in at, and what are your residuals like?
For me, everything is the same as when we were grazing through the parlour. So the only difference is I've got the grazing platform is split into 3 blocks. So I could say I've got 3 different wedges, but it's all the same principles between that 2,800, 3,000 grazing cover. And for me, I am adamant that every grazing in the first 3 or 4 grazings in the spring and early summer has to come down to that 1,500 kilos, 1,500, 1,600, because that is where you maintain your quality for the rest of the season. Those are the little bits that most people get wrong. But if you can maintain those, all the principles are the same. It's good quality grass.
How do you find, as we've not got that herd coming in at once, I was going to say, how do you find maybe a cow that comes in towards the end and there isn't the nicest grass there?
Yeah.
How do you find they cope with it? Or are they grazing it down from that, I don't know, let's say 18 to 15 like you want? Or is that where you maybe have a little bit of a struggle?
You get round that because if you're only like us, we're only averaging 2.3 visits a day. So like I said, it's breakfast, dinner and tea. Some of those cows, so that last cow into A at 10 a.m., 9 times out of 10, she's the first cow in C and vice versa. So she could be the last cow into C, but the first cow into B. They do make it up. And that's when you...
George, you're smiling.
Oh, I'm grinning because it just, when it's new to you, everyone's thinking, I can't even remember A, B and C. But,
which way, right? Yeah.
Me being a few years in, you completely get that now. Some cows skip a grazing. Again, don't worry about it. The mentality is to be a bit more relaxed about it. And you soon know if the cows are hungry or you haven't got it right.
Yeah.
The general principle is if there isn't enough allocated, they'll all be back looking for the next feed. And if you've given them way too much, you might struggle to get them back and you've got to go and get them. I've learned all those bits the hard way in my first few years, and exactly what Matt said, the grazing principles are exactly the same. Decent grazing covers, try and get them to graze it out as best you can.
So you're both still aiming for, as you'd say, 28 to 3,000 and come out 15, 16. And so nothing's changed in that regard.
Nothing's changed. The only thing you need to know is have a good idea of, I was always taught, you've got to measure it to monitor it. If you don't measure it, you can't monitor it. Guesswork, some people manage by, but I can't. So by just measuring that little bit, you do this quick figures. Yes, there is access to AgriNet and other computer programs, but I'm still a little bit old-fashioned. I like to know, quickly write it down in my head. And you just work out, and like George said, you soon know if you've under-allocated because more will come back to the yard, or there'll be more in your collect list if you've over-allocated. But the system is, we run ABC, but you could run an A-B with, if you want a buffer feed, C back indoors, buffer feeding on silage. And the flexibility in the spring and the autumn, it's still the same principles where the main thing is to get into your head. The cows are never shut into a paddock. They always have free access and free range. Once you've got that, so yes, it looks funny. So you might have 10, 20 cows mingling around the yard or the robots milking. There'll probably be 30 or 40 cows on a laneway track, and the rest of another proportion of cows could be in B or A. They're not always in one huddle or one bunch. So in the spring and the autumn, we make far less mess now and are able to graze longer and better than when we had the whole herd as on a...
Because it's a cow or two, not a couple of hundred in one.
So in through the gateway, it's just a little line of cows, not all of them huddling.
You mentioned some people might be buffering. I was going to say I believe there are some people that are grazing, but that's maybe if they're calving all year round, they might keep those fresh cows in to buffer. Yeah. You've got systems like that you're consulting on?
Yeah, so we help systems like that. It can be a little bit more difficult because it's cows become lazy, so they always go to the one place that is easiest for food. But once they know that you've got quality grazed grass outside, they will be pretty good. Yeah. But you've got so many options. So you like your cows in the first 50 days of lactation, they could be separated to a separate area for feeding, and then the rest of the cows could be going out.
And that's robots bring that flexibility, don't they?
Flexibility, yeah.
And I think we've been on a really big learning curve sort of in the last 10, 12 years, really, with grazing with robots, because it used to be loafing with robots, didn't it? If we're brutally honest. Yes. But cows would have access outside, but they'd probably just be mooching around rather than actually grazing.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah. But the other thing with the robots is more and more milk buyers want more detail of what we're doing. And with the robots, you can quickly get that information. Like, we are milk recording every day, so our fat, protein, and cell count and milk yield of every cow is done every day. We never liked milk recording in our previous system. It was always something that if we could avoid it, we did, but it was a necessity. But now it's all done and we don't even know it's done. We just press the button and I can get the results.
You probably spend more time looking at the results than you do actually doing.
You do. And that is the first thing, like George said, joked about going and have a cup of tea. But the first thing we do, we have the information is on our phone. There's cameras all around the yard. So we've got access to cameras on our phone. I can have a cup of tea, get up in the morning, have a cup of tea, scroll through the phone. You quickly see what's priority. And then you can make your day from there.
The other thing to touch on the computer or phone thing or a common question I'm often asked is, do you spend your life looking at it? And actually, you don't. As in, it's not that you're sat in a room just looking at that and not looking at the cows. So we're back on what skill sets needed to run farms like this. But the software is designed to give you a very quick overview of what's going on your farm. So, and that comes from that a cow wearing a collar. So that's, obviously can happen in a parlour as well as a robot. But for me, especially the move to collars, regardless of how they're milked, has provided just an unbelievably fascinating level of data about how they move, how many minutes of eating, rumination, all that sort of thing. Combine that with then the tech that the robot can do, it's a fantastic way to be able to analyse the health traits of the cows that we look after.
So obviously all of this technology provides a lot of data. How do you decide which is the important bits to look at and the less important bits to look at?
I mean, that for me, that still comes with, good human intervention. And you quickly learn two things. One, what's important on the computer reports to look at, And you also quickly learn about your cows as to which ones are the important ones to look at. And so that would be my take on that.
Yeah, so on the Lely Horizon program that we're used to, you have a health report, which there's KPIs, and then if it falls below a certain figure, that triggers the animal to come onto the health report. It's done in the form of a percentage, and then you can decide. So for me, many, once they see a cow on the health report, you've got to get that cow. But for me, once she's over 65, 70%, that's when I would start looking at her, because it might just flag up a little high cell count. Well, 99% of the time, that cow was self-cure, and you don't have to touch her. So for us on that side of it, we've gone, our antibiotic usage is only 3 cows out of every 100 have had antibiotic
Fantastic.
Yes, we have used more pain relief over the time, but that's good. And then it works the same way with you have a activity or heat report again, so the cows are automatically triggered on there. And depending on how you have your robots or separation areas set up, so our grazeway gate is set through from May and June when we're actually serving the spring calved cows. Any animal that comes on the heat report automatically gets segregated to C paddock, which is the closest paddock, and I just go out once a day, clear that paddock, AI them, and then take them off the list, and then they join the rest of the herd. So you're not really hunting around for cows. Yes, we do hunt around for cows when they're on the yard, but not being funny, you actually do need something to do in the winter. So yeah, and hunting around for 5 or 10 cows doesn't actually take long, because we've got areas like everybody, they congregate in that area. And if you've got a system of gates, like I commented to George today, you can never have enough gates, so that one person could open a gate and the cows just flow. So it is such a flexible and easy system.
So the Lely Horizon program does it to a certain extent,
It does,
and then
yes.
you've refined it for your
Yes.
grazing system further, and George has had the pleasure of learning from what you've learned.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the time, and it's time we sort of draw this to a close. It's been a really good conversation with both of you. But like usual, I guess, any last words of wisdom? George, start with yourself.
No, only that I've sort of really enjoyed the journey I've been on to get to where I have. It's meant I've met lots of lovely people, including Matt, but also one of the biggest things for me is it's generated a lot of outside interest to what I'm doing on farm, because it is a little bit different. And so I've really enjoyed hosting other farmers. At the start, it was just people being nosy, looking over the hedge, wanting to see what I was building or what I was doing. But fast forward, that's been discussion groups and school visits and things like that, which we just wouldn't have been doing in the past. And it's I feel like it's a fantastic advert for dairy farming, because these cows are really free range, whether it's winter or summer. They choose where they go. And yeah, very pleased with it, because it works for the cows and it works for me.
Matt?
Well, very much what George was saying, really. So for me, it's probably given me another incentive within dairying, and it means that I'm quite happy to carry on milking cows. Well, not physically, but managing cows for probably another 20 years. And it just makes it so easy. But also for the younger generation that don't want to milk cows. Now we've had various members come through of the younger generation that if you'd asked them to milk a cow, they would have run a mile. But liaising or working their way around the robot, and I've trained them with the grazing, they absolutely love it. And it's just so simple. That was just it. It gives you the flexibility, or us the flexibility to do a lot of other things and enjoyment.
Sarah?
Well, for those of you that know me, know that I've always had aspirations of running my own dairy farm, and that's always been on an autumn block robotic system with self-feed. The only thing you're doing wrong, George, is it should have Jersey cows. So when I win the lottery, it's not an if. When I win the lottery, I'm coming to you so I can learn what I need to do.
More than welcome.
Yes, I don't know what to say to that, really. Otherwise, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much to the both of you. It's been this sort of, we've talked about, we should do this for a little bit, and I'm so glad we finally sat down and done this. So appreciate both your time. It's been fantastic. And it shows that, you can graze with robots. People think, we've already said, once you get robots, you must have, house 365 times a day. And you said that, George, that's your accountant's first reaction, must sell the cows. But it shows you can do it. You both obviously were experienced grazers beforehand, but it doesn't mean you can't go on and continue to be a grazer if that's what you want to be. With robots, it shows that it's more than possible. So thank you for that, for sharing that with us, and hopefully it will make people think about robots in a slightly different way. So on that note, I guess it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the Tune the Cud podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose, and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness, or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during this podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of Tune the Cud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of Tune the Cud Limited, and the views of Sarah Bolt are personal and may not be the views of Kingshay Farming and Conservation Limited and any affiliated companies. For more information on the podcast and details of services offered by Tune the Cud Limited, visit www.tunethecud.com. Thank you and goodbye.